Good evening, I'm Connor Alforque. Welcome to this SpinCheck special right here on 6 News. With the election just days away, there's going to be a lot of focus on several marginal seats, including Lilley in Queensland. While it was already making news, the seat, currently held by Labor on a 0.6% margin, is now also in the spotlight with a candidate referred to the police and 4 so-called freedom candidates aiming to cause an upset. We went on the ground to see which candidates might win this seat that could end up deciding the election.
Ideology is something that's not driving me, why I decided to put my hand up. I'm afraid that we're losing our freedoms. So the only next thing is, a run to communism. Well, I don't want my children growing up in that. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens in steps.
2 years of restrictions and nearly a decade of declining trust in the major parties will play right into the hands of the UAP this election.
There's nothing between Liberal and Labor anymore.
The best way to vote Liberal is to vote Labor, and the best way to vote Labor is to vote Liberal.
It's the first time since before COVID that the nation is heading to the polls.
Lifelong Green voters, they're giving their vote to us, and it's all based on the vaccination mandates.
Damn the critics and the fact-checkers.
The antithesis of truth. I actually find that quite amusing. No.
It'd be easy to dismiss their countercultural views, but this movement has netted the educated, the wealthy, those disillusioned with the current state of affairs, and the odd conspiracy theorist. They say COVID was their awakening, and they're emerging as a force to be reckoned with this upcoming election.
My mum lives in your electorate, and I don't want her exposed to people who are not going to be vaccinated because of these crazy conspiracy theories that you're spreading.
You're the one doing that.
What was it that attracted you to the United Australia Party, and when was your first moment of reckoning?
Okay, interesting one. Well, I've been a Liberal voter all my life up until this time. And it's not about being an anti-vaxxer. In fact, I'm far from it, and I would have been one of the first people in Australia to have actually had the COVID jabs. It was when all the coercion started.
There is so much facts from all of the world-leading doctors.
Gerardine Hoogland is unvaccinated, a former member of the Liberal Party, and now running as a candidate for the United Australia Party in the seat of Lilley, north of Brisbane. It is the state's most marginal seat, currently held by Labor on a precarious margin of 0.6%. In 2019, the UAP picked up just 2.3% of the vote in Lilley. Nationwide, that figure was 3.4%. This time around, they're anticipating big swings off the back of lockdowns, restrictions, and mandates.
But I think it won't be universal. It will be very varied across seats.
Yeah, that's my kind of party. The United Australia Party.
The vaccine is experimental. The ABC should be defunded, and the Russia-Ukraine crisis is scripted. They're just some of the views espoused here at a Freedom Forum at Sandgate's Town Hall, and 6 News was the only media crew inside. 4 of the 7 candidates in this seat hail from a Freedom Party, and at the forum, they all appeared to be singing from the same songbook. One Nation.
I just think this whole woke genderised is a distraction. It's a distraction. It's nothing where it's whatever is happening is, what's the latest one? There's obviously Ukraine, which is all, scripted, and climate change, and there's some other thing.
The UAP.
And the one thing that I will not do is have my daughter tell her son that I stood by and did nothing to try to preserve the freedoms that everyone in this room at one time in their life enjoyed.
The Liberal Democrats.
Their willingness to use every means at their disposal to silence our concerns, to punish us for the smallest non-compliance.
And the Informed Medical Options Party.
What will he do about the ABC? He mentioned it.
I was sure that Lee and Norman are held to account, because they've been just about single-handedly responsible for the death of democracy in this country.
Analysts agree there will be swings towards right libertarian parties, but that it will ultimately be inconsequential in the House of Representatives. proposition that Gerardine rejects in refusing to rule out the possibility of a United Australia Party government.
Please give a big, big welcome for the next Prime Minister of Australia, Craig Kelly.
Now, you tapped the possibility on Twitter of a United Australia Party government. There have been other posts by you saying Craig Kelly's ready to lead Australia. Do you actually think that the United Australia Party can win 76 seats in this election and have the chance to form government?
Well, I never said win 76 seats. I believe that we are in for a chance, that nobody really knows the outcome of this election. It is the biggest unknown in our, well, definitely recent political history. And yes, I do believe that Craig is ready to lead.
My recommendations on my how to vote cards is to put the freedom fighting parties first.
One Nation candidate Michelle Wilde says it's mutually beneficial to have the four freedom candidates of Lilley working together.
Obviously I'd love you to vote for me, but also equally that's why we've come together, because working together is far better than not working together.
It's a strategy Greens candidate for Lilley, Melissa Stevens, believes will backfire.
I think that they're all running on a very similar platform, and I think that they may well have shot themselves in the foot. They may just split the alternative vote between themselves rather than actually enhancing it.
From their advertising, they may appear to be one and the same, but their policies aren't. It must be noted that this table does not encompass the full breadth of any party's policies. Some of the most radical policies come from the Informed Medical Options Party, including halting the 5G rollout. One Nation has made its views clear, but hasn't formally committed to policies on any of the following matters. The Liberal Democrats want to make voting voluntary, while the UAP wants to abolish National Cabinet. It's these policies that can lure voters, but how realistic even are they? Any policy requiring legislative change must be passed through the lower and upper houses with a majority vote. Any constitutional amendment, such as a Bill of Rights, would require a referendum, and that is a notoriously futile and expensive endeavour.
We've got to pull out that banking power, and we say that home loans in this country for 5 years are limited to 3% so people can survive. Otherwise, they'll lose their mortgages. No one's telling you what's really happening. So that's a crisis. I don't want to see, it's not just losing your home or your wealth.
It sounds good. You cannot legislate that in the Parliament.
Well, of course you can.
For the 3%.
Of course you can.
Underwrite it? You can't. The banks are actually on the
no,
world money market.
I'm not beholden to the banks,
Pauline. You're going to underwrite it? You're worth the money.
No, I don't. You don't need to. It needs to go to the Constitution.
So I'm an aspiring journalist, and my question is, how can you guarantee that you'll implement these policies to outlaw lockdowns? Because it's a given you won't form government. And if you do help the majors form government, how likely is it that they'll actually adopt your policies? Because the way you describe the majors seems to me that they won't adopt your policies.
Thanks for the question. I think the problem we're having is ScoMo has let the states run riot over us, and he is breaching the Constitution. And so again, the idea that we have a Bill of Rights in our Constitution that needs to be firmed up. I don't know if in the lower house, if there's more of us together and we're fighting for these changes and putting forth this legislation changes, then the more of us, the better, obviously. No one knows what's going to happen. I mean, you know, if Anika Wells gets back in, God help us, is all I can say. If we want change, if we want a different 3 years, then any one of us will do our damnedest to convince. It's not actually even convincing, it's, you know, people do understand that they've had their freedoms taken away. They've just been frightened by the media. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't really have a crystal ball. I don't know how we can work together with and how many freedom candidates will get into the lower house. But
time, thanks. We have no more time for other answers, please, on this question.
In 2019, 2/3 of those who voted for One Nation or the UAP had their preferences flow to the coalition. The UAP's How to Vote cards recommended preferencing the Liberals second in every electorate. That's not the case this time around, with other freedom parties mostly preferenced above the majors. And yet, the belief that the UAP is a front for the Liberals is commonplace, one that's even held by a former candidate.
We were being used as effectively pawns to prop up the LNP.
But it's not a front for the Liberals. That's my reply.
Yeah.
It's not.
And at the last election, Clive Palmer said the primary goal of the United Australia Party was to keep Labor out of office, but then you said both major parties are as bad as the other. Which is it?
Well, that was last election. That's not, and I wasn't in UAP then, and I was really no good me commenting on it because it's not the same. United Australia Party now is a whole different beast. We've got 151 candidates running across the country. This is, the other election was pre-COVID, different world. 2 years ago, our lives have all been turned upside down.
Even though preferences in Lilley will inevitably flow to a major party, such as the Liberals, which is embroiled in a scandal of national significance in this seat. LNP candidate for Lilley, Vivian Lobo, is under investigation by the AFP over allegations he lied about living in the electorate.
This is the Everton Park address Mr. Lobo reportedly submitted to the AEC. The dilapidated property was purchased in September 2021, months after his predecessor Wayne Swan stood down. Electoral fraud carries a maximum 12 months in prison, with the possibility Lobo could lose his seat if elected and found guilty. As the second most marginal in the country, this is a must-win seat for the coalition. While we were filming, a visitor to the property informed us that Mr. Lobo was inside. His car was at the property and we saw a hand peek through a curtain, but he wasn't willing to answer our questions. Hey Mr. Lobo, it's Connor from 6 News. Just wondering if you'd be able to answer some questions for us. Mr. Lobo, we know you're in there. News Corp reports Mr. Lobo is instead living 23 kilometres away in Windsor. And that is SpinCheck for this Wednesday. A reminder, 6 News will be live all night this Saturday from 6 p.m. Eastern with unbiased coverage of the federal election. You can tune in by subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking all notifications, or head to our website, 6newsau.com. I'm Connor R4K. Thanks for your company. Good night.